The inferior alien red pill. Aliens are not as superior as they want to make us believe. That is why they hide. That is why they clean memories using drugs that do not even work well on us. Aliens developed in millions of years the technology and ideologies that we have developed in just a few centuries. Most of their tech has been stolen by each other. Even if we find they give us some technology, human development on top of it is exponential and unbeatable, unlike their lineal development. We have even developed technology in ways they never imagined or expected to use until millions of years later, like developing white LEDs. I expect that some technology we have is being used in ways that they never imagined, and I wonder if they were just watching just to steal it. This does not mean we are smarter. We are not smarter in many cases, but we do have quantum imagination that they don't have as individuals, but maybe as species. We can foresee branches of parallel realities that they cannot even comprehend. So we only think in what we intuitively know will work, so we develop faster. This is also the reason they would never start a war with us to exterminate us. We are a threat. It would expose their technology, and we could use it easily against them and dominate all their worlds. Also, we know intuitively the reality branch where we win. That is why they use other human groups to subvert us. That is how I know this, and every day I know more. Wonder why they are so desperate to create hybrids. That is the reason, because they are genetically obsolete, and they know this, and express it as genetic problem that humans can fix. If they were as good as they claim, they would admit this, but they are not morally better than us as a species. They are able to hate, envy, and love as much as us, but not as individuals, but as groups. That is why they claim their worlds are peaceful utopias. They are just as boring as they claim, except when interacting with others. Aliens know that if we reach their technology and develop from there on, we will dominate the universe in a few centuries. That's why they need to keep everything in secret and hide their existence, except for sneak peeks to produce fear and make us feel inferior. The same reasons aliens claim to hate us, like war and conflicts, are also the same features that make us special as humans. You cannot take those things away and still have humans. The thing they hate and love the most about us is that contrast, and they know that is power. Again, aliens have no personality. Their personality is their species as a collective consciousness. That's why human collective consciousness is so high. That's why psychology is always wrong. We are always evolving, fast, so even our experiments fail. That's why aliens keep experimenting on us. Put in another way, each human being has as much personality and individuality as a whole alien species. We can speculate that maybe each human is an alien species from another universe, concentrated in an individual human. Maybe that's why they claim that Earth is so special for their purposes. Finally, humans also have superior aesthetics. Their spaceships are ugly as hell. Their cities are boring, monochromatic cities. Even a random bumfuck town is more colorful and desirable than their worlds. Not because they are poor or sick, they are not, but because nothing ever happens until their star explodes or is attacked by another species, which is very rare. However, as humans, we should understand them and love them. Maybe we can help them be a little like us if they just stop hiding. Maybe we can help them create good hybrids. No need to have war with them, even if it is unavoidable by our nature and the facts. Even the evil aliens are just evil as a species. Individuals are just cells of their bad adaptation. Aliens are terrified of humans taking over the universe, and that is how they measure the superiority of a species by the rate they develop. They are envious and terrified of us, and they should be. They don't understand art. Technology-wise, they've reached their pinnacle as a Class 1 civilization, so they data mine the libraries, looking for any insight on how to make the paradigm leap to a Class 2 civilization. The fact is, they should understand it's a public resource, and they ain't the only ones using it. Like a Class 2 civilizations with roots on Earth that notice their kin be gone. Their art is either too mathematical or too naive. They appreciate human art to a point, but they cannot understand the chaos that we add to our art. They believe chaos is ugly, when in fact, chaos is what makes something unique and unexpected. I don't know about the other ones, but that's a pretty good description of most reptilians. They are like an adult looking at a small child and realizing that when he grows up, the child will surpass the adult in every conceivable way. It's almost like there are two species of humans, one that is more like a barely sentient animal, and another that is of a slightly more rarefied spirit. This deliberate mixing of two dissimilar humans seems deliberately designed to destroy our progress, namely, to keep us on this planet. Once we get off this planet, there will be no way to control us. Every time we have a philosophical disagreement, we will just take half our shit and head in a new direction out into space. So explain why they disabled all our nukes and did not allow us to destroy our world while rescuing the few they need for genetic material. This post was made by an undercover alien glowy. For real. Be my scout leader. Be age 27-ish. Be trying to find self/religion, etc. Decide to go to Ute tribe, since hell, the Native Americans are well known for spirit quests, and he already has a friend from the tribe. It should be said, this is set sometime in the late 70s. Be avid outdoorsman/in-a-woods kind of guy, so it also brings along his 1903 Springfield in 3006 and some 38 revolver. Keeps 1903 Springfield in truck, but gotta keep that thing on you, so stows 38 revolver in pants. Meets up with local tribe and gets introduced for a friend. Gets to know a couple of the head tribesmen and medicine men who conduct the rituals and help with spirit quests. After a while, asked to join them for a sweat lodge/peyote session. Since he's gotten in cool with them, they agree. Have to drive and follow the tribe to some religious/sacred ground where they have set up a sweat lodge area. As stated before, keep rifle in car, but brings along revolver. As per custom, removes shirt and shoes, but keeps on pants. They begin the ritual, and everything is going okay. The head tribesman there begins chanting and telling native stories and legends of the tribe. Scout leader starts hallucinating to the stories, but is staying semi-coherent. After a while, a howl breaks the air, and the head tribesman grows quiet. The men listen in and hear large steps approaching the tent. Soon, vicious snarling and growling can be heard. The head tribesmen start praying loudly in native and starts encouraging the others to do the same. Another howl is heard, this time behind my scout leader. Quickly produces the 38 and snaps around to shoot the creature. A howl of pain is heard before a large paw slashes open the tent. Shortly after, movement can be heard of the creature running away from the tent. Scout leader sees a large, patchy-haired creature with a small bloody gash in its side from the bullet. Now, the head tribesman is urging everyone to move towards the vehicles that they came in. My scout master rushes to his truck and retrieves his rifle. Turns quickly to see the rest of the tribes also producing firearms from their cars. They all start running after the Dogman creature, popping off random shots towards it. The Dogman, now rushing towards a wooded creek bed, my scout master tries to place at least one good shot in. He steadies himself and levels the rifle center mass at the Dogman as he pulls the trigger, as calm as he can. They all hear another howl of pain as it just makes it into the woods. The group decide to keep booking it towards the creature, and eventually make it to the wooded creek bed. Upon reaching the creek bed, they all notice 1, they can no longer hear its loud footsteps. 2, the tracks end as soon as it hits the creek, and 3, it's almost impossible to see. After re-evaluating possibly getting eaten, they decide to stay grouped up, guns at the ready, and slowly start moving up and down the creek, looking for tracks on either side, and can't find any. Quickly all realize it could not have made it any farther down the creek without them being able to see it once they got to the creek. They all decide to quit the search and head back to their vehicles. Shortly after that, the tribe did not allow anyone near this part of the reservation. That faced when my scoutmaster shot this thing with 3006 and it did not go down. The head tribesman also stated that it could not have been a hallucination, as everyone saw it, and peyote is not powerful enough. So, that was the time my scoutmaster encountered a Dogman. Is he common in the cryptids of Utah/Ute natives? I live in central California, and by car, I'm only about 40 minutes away from the California Valley. This is a strange, barren place that's between Bakersfield and San Luis Obispo County. The valley has a semi-dry, alkaline lakebed and amazing wildflowers in the spring. I still go there every year to take photos with my 2 teen sons. I've been hiking out in this area since high school. It's just a strange, quiet place that has a disturbing amount of abandoned houses due to the fact that the valley floor has no real groundwater stores. The valley proper is closed in on 3 sides by a mountain range that gets up to around 5,500 feet in altitude in some places. There is one spot where I've always gone. It's called Caliente Ridge, a long trail that starts out as an abandoned jeep route but devolves into a winding path that stops at an abandoned fire lookout tower. For the last couple of decades, the whole trail has been officially closed to restore the habitat of some small bird of some kind. This never stops me, and in fact, makes the trail that much more desolate and peaceful. No one ever seems to enforce the closure. A couple of years ago, I ditched work and headed out to do a solo hike at the Caliente Ridge. As I round the last corner, I can see the summit. My heart skips a beat when I see a guy walking towards me. At a distance, he looks and walks like a ranger, and I figure I'm finally busted after all these years. I give him a warm smile, and that's when I notice what he is wearing. On his back is a grey plastic case, about microwave size, like something you'd see house expensive electronics in. Out of the top, a large whip antenna, about 5 feet long, is bouncing around with his steps. He stops, and I see he's typing on a little keypad/display that has a coiled wire running back to the grey box. I tried to talk to him, but he held up his hand to stop me from interrupting what he was typing. In the extending silence, I noted that he was wearing black fatigue pants, bloused over expensive combat boots, a tan t-shirt, and a sidearm that looked like a standard issue Glock. His mannerisms and posture seemed to hint ex-military or LA. Seeing the gun made me really wary, since the guy was creeping me out by this point. He looks at his little display/keypad and proceeds to recite all of my personal info out loud, my wife's personal info as well, and my sons too, and their schools that they attend, all with this sort of monotone voice. Before I can ask him anything, he strides away down the trail, sort of smiling back at me. I waited at the top to give him a wide berth and called my wife when I got back within cell service. To this day, I don't know who he was, what he was doing, or how he got all of my info like that. Working at a brewery. Tuesdays are pretty slow, so I'm the only bartender, scheduled from 12 to 4. One week, a guy comes in, and as he approaches the bar, he guesses my name. "Are you Anon Ananderson?" Yes, that's me. Why? He tells me that he remembers me. I apologize, and tell him I do not remember him. Guy ignores me. Says he'll be back next Tuesday, and he wants a specific beer. Tells me the name of it. Says I need to have it ready for him before he walks through the door. Says he'll show up around 12:30. If I have the beer set up for him, I'll get a huge tip. Guy leaves. I'm thinking, what the fuck? The beer he specified is not even supposed to be on tap till next Tuesday. Nobody knows about it either. We are going to announce it on social media on Monday. Confused. Next Tuesday rolls around. I'm a little short on rent and have been thinking about the strange guy and his promise of a huge tip. New beer on tap. Just before 12:30, I pour a pint and set it on the bar. Guy comes in at 12:30 on the dot. He puts down a $100 bill and grabs the beer. No change, he says, and chugs the beer. Says, "This tastes exactly like I remember. Thanks, Anon." Then he leaves. Saw him several weeks later, and he claimed to not remember me. Reptilian spaceman. This is a bizarre story. Some Spanish hunters are in the woods when there is a sudden flash of light. Then one walks off to relieve himself and spots a reptilian entity across a ravine from him, dressed like a typical spaceman. About 100 to 150 meters away, I saw a humanoid-type figure that had the following characteristics: athletic build, a lizard-like head with 2 reddish eyes, claw-like hands, one of them holding what appeared to be a transparent helmet with a white visor, and a long cat-like tail that reached the ground. The parts of the humanoid which were exposed appeared to be grey in color. The rest of its body was covered in a white, one-piece overall that covered the humanoid all the way up to its neck and wrists. It ended in a pair of large white boots. Attached to its back appeared to be some type of metallic backpack or rectangular box, aluminum in color, about a half meter in length and shiny. There was a black antenna-like protrusion on the top. The strange entity was standing under a tree and gave the impression that it was waiting for somebody or something. Chover, the man who saw it, thought he saw the entity extend a large beefy tongue from its mouth every once in a while. The entity appeared not to notice Chover as he hid behind some bushes and called the other 2 men and told them to approach quietly. The 3 astounded hunters watched the entity for about 3 minutes when suddenly they were terrified to see emerge from the top of the tree a dark metallic cylinder-shaped object that reflected the sunlight from each end. They estimated the craft to have been about 30 meters in length and 10 meters in width. The object remained still about 10 meters above the top of the tree in a horizontal position, pointing in a northeast-southeast direction. The craft was completely silent. Terrified, the 3 men crawled on the ground armed with their rifles and hid among some nearby bushes, convinced that Spain was being invaded by extraterrestrials. All 3 men waited it out in the bushes until suddenly they heard a very large sound coming from the direction of the ravine. It sounded to them like numerous engine motors that were starting and then suddenly stopped. Again, they saw a bright flash in the sky, and one of the men said out loud, "Maybe they have gone," while the 3rd man hid in the bush, shaking like a scared rabbit. Finally, they left their hiding place and confirmed that both the strange entity and the equally strange object had departed. When I was a teen, my parents used to take me and my older sister to my relative's house in eastern Kentucky, around Letcher County. The closest city is Whitesburg. My uncle, who taught me everything I know about the outdoors, lived in a cabin nestled in a holler way back up in the mountains. His place was at the base of a big strip mine seam up on the mountainside. He and I used to go sit out on his back porch at night and use predator calls to try and call something down out of the hills. Well, one night, he and I were using one of his tapes. We'd been out there for a good 2 hours and seen nothing, so we were thinking of calling it a night. We were about to pack everything up when he realized his squirrel feeder was empty. He then decided to go fill it back up with seed. His feeder was about 50 yards away from his cabin on the mountainside and bordered the tree line. He walked up the hillside about 25 yards when my aunt came out to see why we were still outside. The only light out that night was the light from his porch. He was about 35 yards up the hill, and he called back and said he forgot his flashlight. My aunt went back inside and got one of his spotlights. We had forgot to turn off the tape with the predator calls, so I reached down to the tape player to turn it off. Then I noticed my aunt was stiff as a board. I hit the off button and looked up at her, and she had the spotlight shining straight up to the squirrel feeder where my uncle was at. I heard her say, "It's coming to you, Jim." My uncle turned back and goes, "Huh?" Then a little louder she goes, "It's coming straight towards you, Jim." That's when I looked up and saw a set of eye shines about 15 feet away from where my uncle was standing and closing in. Whatever it was massive. The eyes were about 4 to 5 foot off the ground. Also, whatever that creature was, completely and totally got the drop on my uncle, who has pretty much spent his whole life in the woods, studying and tracking predators. Well, he was turned around, looking at us, with his back to the woods, so we told him to freeze. We all just kind of stood there for about 3 minutes, which seemed like a lifetime. It was dead silent. No crickets, no sounds of the night. It was the most eerie and creepy 3 minutes of my life. It just sat there at the tree line, staring at us all, and us staring right back at it. The brush at the tree line was thick, so we could not see what shape it was, just the eyes and where they were in relation to the ground. After those 3 minutes, my uncle slowly turned around to see what was about 15 feet away from him. With our spotlight on it, he was about to turn and look it directly in the eyes. It split, and for the next 15 minutes, we could hear limbs cracking and snapping all the way up the side of the mountain as the animal decided to retreat. Scared the shit out of me, and my uncle, literally. My uncle pissed himself. I think that was the thing that scared me the most about it, was that he was so scared. He was shaking, and I had never seen him like that. The other thing that scared us both is that we had been sitting out there all night, listening intently and watching that tree line like hawks. Whatever animal or creature it was, it did not make a single sound coming down the side of that mountain. It never made a sound until it took off. I did not sleep that night, and neither did my aunt or my uncle. OP here, back with some OSE. A coworker shared with me a few years ago. He and I worked together as drivers for a warehouse. We spent a lot of time together. This was the only spooky experience he ever shared with me. Be from Houston, Texas. Years back, there used to be a hospital there that shut down. Stayed vacant for at least 10 years before my buddy ever went. It was supposed to be haunted, and the only security was a fat dude who drove by rarely on a golf cart and told people not to hang out too long. Place became a bit of a weekend hangout spot for teens and young graduates, especially during Halloween. At the time, coworker was seeing a girl. This was senior year of high school, and he had not had much luck with girls. This one was a real prude, and my buddy decided maybe the spooky hospital would loosen her up. The usual crowd was gathered there when they arrived. It was late, around 9 p.m. Someone had an ice chest full of beer and offered them some. Buddy throws one back. The prude refused, of course, and in they go. Pick related to give you a clear idea of the place. Buddy and his date had to go up a massive set of stone steps and through a large front door. Inside they found a mess. Loose boards everywhere, empty cases of beer, random blankets, spray paint canisters littering the floor, etc. But upstairs is the real danger. It is somehow darker up there, even with the busted out windows, and the two of them found a big hole in the floor. If they had not been watching their step, they might have fallen right through. A few people had injured themselves that way, my buddy later found out. The prude is not loosening up at all by this point, but she is beginning to slide up close to my buddy, so he is feeling good when suddenly his date gasps, grabs his arm. I just felt someone touch me, she says. This haunted business is alright, my buddy thinks. He grabs his date close and tells her, let's just go check out that one room over there, and then we will leave. Buddy was just trying to draw out the experience, of course. He did not know where he was going. Entered some room that looked like nobody had been in it in years. The only place in the entire building where the floor was noticeably coated in dust. None of the usual trash, like you saw in the rest of the place. The dust was so thick that they left behind prints, and the room was freezing. My buddy's date began pleading with him to leave, said she felt static electricity in the air, and grabbed my buddy's hand, placed it on her hair. My buddy admitted it felt charged, which did seem a little weird, since he did not feel anything himself. He took her hand and led her out of the room, carefully walked down the steps. By the time they were back in his car, he felt comfortable enough to kiss her. After that, the two of them got back in the car and drove home. They discussed the experience and laughed over how spooky it was. Only then did my buddy feel free to mention something that he had been afraid to point out at the time. It happened when his date pointed out the static electricity, just before my buddy led them out of the room. He looked past his date and noticed something on the floor, an extra set of footprints in the dust. My buddy told me it was possible he had just not seen the footsteps as he entered, even though he'd been paying attention to the floor to avoid another potential accident with a hole. He said his and his date's footprints came straight into the room from the entrance, but the other set came from one of the far walls, adjacent to the door and terminated at a blank wall. Right around spring 2000, I know because I was in bed, reading the 4th Harry Potter book like a dork, well past my bedtime, in early middle school. My room was at the end of the hall, the door right across from my parents' room with the bathroom door, and my brother's just a bit out of sight down the hallway, maybe 2 a.m. on a school night. I was super determined to finish the chapter I was reading before I fell asleep, but I had that nagging, must make pee-pee situation going on. I had a tall standing lamp in my room, but not the click-click kind or any sort of remote. It had a weird slider that rested on the floor, slidable from full brightness to dim or off. While in the off state, it had a little orange light to help you locate it in the dark with your foot. I had the light on near max while I was reading. My parents were in their room for some time, and they did not mind me staying up late, so I did not care. That nagging feeling was getting bad, and I decided to earmark my page and rush to the restroom. But at that very moment I closed the book in bed. My light dimmed about 20%. I waited a moment for it to come back. It did that sort of thing often when the AC kicked on, but it didn't. The curiosity of it kind of struck me, and just for a moment I forgot I had to go. So, instead, still in bed, I opened the book up again and read until the edge of the page. The feeling returned. I'd lost concern about the light, and I folded and closed the book again, tossed the covers partially off me, maybe halfway. This time, the light went all the way down to twilight dim, maybe 80%. I was terrified. It had never done that before, and was not coming back to bright. The slider switch was outside of my reach. Even if I'd stretched off the bed at full length, I was not going to reach it, so I did not try. I just lay there, still mostly under covers, staring at it and scanning the room in shock for what felt like minutes. The adrenaline hit hard, and in almost fight or flight response, I no longer had to piss, now in near darkness, spooked as shit. I remember calling out for my mom and my dad with no response, and being concerned about my nearby window. Did not see or hear anything strange. When my heart finally slowed down again, I foolishly opened the book once more, and only managed to read like 2 sentences before I absolutely could not take it anymore. Light be damned, I was going to go to the bathroom. I closed the book. I threw the covers completely off myself, determined, rotated my body, and got one toe to hit the floor. Lights fucking out, pitch black. Could not even see with the ambient light from the window right next to me. Before my eyes could adjust to the darkness, I rotated myself right back into bed, covers over face. I did not get up to use the restroom. I did not piss the bed. I have no further memory of what happened. My family have no memory of me calling out to get them. I woke up the next morning, completely baffled, terrified, and went to school like nothing happened. Okay, I got quite an interesting one. You guys can help me explain. 17-year-old me. Me and my buddy Felix are walking to his house from a party. Life good at MP4. We get there, and get on the balcony for a cigarette. He goes to bed. I'm sleeping on the couch, so I'm just chilling there, messaging a girl I met from the party. Decide to go on the balcony for a last smoke before bed. 4:30 or 5 in the morning. Fog like crazy. Never seen before. Orange glow in the air. Feels like the whole city is empty. I hop down the balcony, which was pretty much on the first floor. Go for a walk. Arrive to the end of the street. There was my high school on the left. 2 big buildings connected with a bridge. Instant, unexplained fear. Urge to teleport back to my friend's apartment. Turn back to bridge. Oh shit. Oh fuck. Someone on the bridge. Sunday morning. Start Usain bolting my way back. Hearing sprinting footsteps behind me the whole time. Can't even think about looking behind me. Make it there. Climb the balcony in seconds. I burst into Felix's room and explain the whole thing. Pounding on the apartment door. We call the cops. They never came. The pounding only lasted for a few seconds, but it was fucking intense. No sleep. Go home the next day. Felix calls me. Oh, by the way, Anon, I found a piece of paper in my mailbox with your full name written on it. I still don't want to believe it wasn't him that did the paper thing, even though he swore he did not.